Captain Vex stood on the observation deck of the trading station, her scaled hands clasped behind her back as she watched the ships drift through the void. She had earned her reputation through blood and survival, the sole representative of Carvos Prime among the civilized races. Her world was a nightmare of crushing gravity, toxic storms, and predators that could shatter steel with their jaws. She had clawed her way off that hellscape and into the stars, proving herself worthy of respect among species that evolved under gentler suns. The other captains feared her. The traders gave her favorable rates. The diplomats spoke carefully in her presence. She was the Deathworlder, the walking reminder that the universe could forge creatures of terrible resilience. She wore that identity like armor. Captain Vex, her communications officer, chirped through the headset. A new vessel has requested docking clearance. Registry shows it as the merchant ship Wanderer, hailing from a system called Sol. Vex frowned. She had never heard of Sol. The galaxy was vast, and new species made contact with the Coalition regularly, but something about the request made her scales prickle with unease. "Grant them clearance," she said, "but keep sensors active. I want to know what we are dealing with." The Wanderer was smaller than most merchant vessels, built with unusual angles and a design philosophy that seemed more functional than elegant. Vex made her way to the docking bay, curiosity overriding her usual caution. A crowd had already gathered, merchants and travelers eager to see what novelties the newcomers might bring. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The first figure to step through was bipedal, standing roughly at Vex's height. It wore a simple gray suit that looked practical rather than ceremonial. The creature had smooth skin and a light brown shade, with hair growing only from the top of its head in dark curls. Two forward-facing eyes regarded the crowd with obvious intelligence and caution. "Greetings," the creature said, its voice emerging from a translation device at its collar. "I am Captain Maya of Earth. We come in peace and hope to establish trade relations with your station." The crowd murmured. This Maya looked soft, fragile even. Her world must have been gentle indeed to produce such delicate features. Vex felt a strange disappointment. She had hoped for something more interesting. "Welcome to Coalition Station 17, Vex said, stepping forward. The crowd parted for her automatically, recognizing her authority. "I am Captain Vex of Carvos Prime. I will escort you through customs and orientation." Maya's eyes met hers, and Vex saw something flicker there, something she could not quite identify. The human smiled, showing flat teeth that seemed entirely unsuited for tearing flesh. "Thank you, Captain. I appreciate your hospitality." The customs process was routine. Maya carried standard trade goods, technical manuals, and samples of Earth culture. Nothing dangerous, nothing particularly valuable. Vex found herself growing bored until the medical scanner flagged an anomaly. "Your gravity rating," the customs official stammered, its tentacles quivering with confusion. "There must be an error. This shows your homeworld at 9.8 units. Vex felt her scales ripple. That was impossible. 9.8 was barely less than Carvos Prime's crushing 10.2. This fragile creature could not possibly have evolved under such conditions. Maya glanced at the readout and shrugged. "The scanner is working correctly. Earth is a high-gravity world by Coalition standards." "Impossible," Vex said, her voice sharp. "You are too delicate. Your bones would snap like twigs." The human's expression shifted into something that might have been amusement. "Our bones are surprisingly strong, Captain. We had to adapt to predators, falls, and our own violent nature. Evolution on Earth favored durability." The customs official brought up more data, and Vex felt her certainty crumbling. The atmospheric composition of Earth included oxygen at concentrations that would be toxic to most species. The temperature ranges were extreme. The planet hosted diseases, parasites, and predators that made the official's color shift to a nauseated gray. "You are a Deathworlder," Vex said slowly, the words tasting strange in her mouth. "We prefer not to use that term," Maya replied. "But yes, Earth is a challenging environment. We have learned to thrive despite it." Vex had built her identity on being unique, on being the monster that other species feared and respected. The presence of another Deathworlder should have been a relief, a kindred spirit in a galaxy of soft beings. Instead, she felt threatened, as if her special status was being stolen away. "Your species must be warriors, then," Vex said, searching for common ground. "Carvosians are bred for combat. Our culture revolves around strength and conquest." Maya's expression became unreadable. "Humans have fought many wars, but we have also built great civilizations. We create art, music, and literature. We explore not just to conquer, but to understand. Violence is part of our nature, but so is compassion." The words struck Vex like a physical blow. On Carvos Prime, strength was everything. The weak were called. Compassion was a luxury they could not afford. She had never questioned this, never imagined that a Deathworld could produce anything else. Over the following days, Vex found herself drawn to the human ship. Maya was generous with information about Earth, and each new detail challenged Vex's understanding of survival. Humans had domesticated predators as companions. They had developed medicine to heal the weak rather than abandoning them. They had created governments based on cooperation rather than dominance. "How do you maintain order?" Vex asked during one of their conversations. "Without calling the weak, your species should have collapsed under its own weight." Maya leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "We realized that diversity is strength. The weak today might be strong tomorrow. The sick might invent the cure that saves millions. By protecting each other, we all become more resilient." Vex felt something shift inside her chest. She thought of the hatchlings on Carvos Prime, who did not survive their first year, who died not because they were truly weak, but because no one helped them. She thought of the scars she carried, each one a lesson learned in isolation. "Your way seems inefficient," Vex said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It requires trust," Maya admitted. "And trust is perhaps the hardest thing to build. But once established, it multiplies our strength in ways that individual power never could." A disturbance on the station interrupted their discussion. A cargo hauler had suffered a critical failure, its reactor containment failing. Evacuation alarms blared through the corridors. Vex moved immediately, her training taking over. She reached the engineering section to find panicked civilians fleeing from the radiation leak. Maya was already there, wearing a makeshift radiation suit cobbled together from emergency supplies. The human was working on the reactor controls, her movements precise despite the danger. "You should evacuate," Vex shouted over the alarms. "The radiation will kill you." "It will kill everyone on this station if I do not stabilize it," Maya shouted back. "Help me or get out of the way." Vex had never worked with another Deathworlder before. She had always operated alone, trusting only her own strength. But something in Maya's tone made her move forward, adding her own hands to the effort. Together, they managed to reroute the coolant systems and bring the reactor back under control. When they emerged from the engineering section, both were burned and exhausted. Medical teams rushed forward with anti-radiation treatments. Vex looked at Maya, seeing the human with new eyes. This creature was not her rival. She was her equal, forged by a different but equally harsh world. "Why did you risk your life?" Vex asked as the medics worked. "This is not your station. These are not your people." Maya smiled, and this time Vex understood the expression. "Because they needed help. Because I could make a difference. Is that not reason enough?" In that moment, Vex realized how small her worldview had been. She had believed that being a Deathworlder meant being strong, being feared, being alone. Maya had shown her that it could mean something else entirely. Strength without purpose was just violence. True resilience came from connection, from choosing to protect others, even at cost to yourself. The station authorities offered both captains commendations. Vex accepted hers with quiet dignity, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She thought of Carvos Prime, of the culture that had shaped her. For the first time, she wondered if survival required more than just strength. Perhaps it required the courage to change. "Will you return to Earth?" Vex asked Maya as the human prepared to depart. "Eventually," Maya said. "But first, I want to explore more of the galaxy. There is so much to learn, so many species to meet." "And if you encounter hostility?" Maya's expression became serious. "Then I will defend myself and my crew. Humans are not pacifists, Captain. We simply believe that violence should be the last option, not the first." Vex watched the Wanderer undock and accelerate into the void. She stood alone on the observation deck, her reflection staring back at her from the transparent aluminum. She had believed she was unique, the only monster in a galaxy of prey. Instead, she had discovered that monsters came in many forms, and some of them chose to be heroes. She activated her communication console and began drafting a message to the Carvosian Council. It would be controversial, perhaps even heretical. But she had S,